Hey, this is Matt Wimmer from Brody Precision. In this video, we're going to take a look at an issue that comes up very frequently from within Niagara, and that is where you can't get your emails to go out. You can't connect to your email server, or you can't get your weather reports to work, or you can't get anything to work that requires a domain name for communication. And if you know a little bit about how domain names work, DNS is the issue here, and thankfully it's a pretty easy fix when you're using a JACE. So let's jump into Niagara and I'll show you what the symptoms are, and then we'll go and take a look at that fix. All right, so we're in Niagara now, and the first thing you'll notice in the weather service, if you have a weather report, which I've got one set up here already, and it should be working, but I get nothing. Everything is stale. We get 0 temperatures. I go in, right-click, actions, update weather report. Nothing's going, okay? That is your symptom on the weather service side. Now, if I go to my outgoing email account, where I'm trying to send out an email, you can see my queue size is 1, so there's an email there that should be going out, but we can see that we are in status down and our polling is failing. And the reason for that failure is it's saying you can't connect to the host. So let's actually now jump over to the application director, so underneath our platform, and see a little bit more detail about what those errors are. So on the email side, we can see that our email account's not polling. We can't connect to our host, which in this case is Gmail. I know I have all the settings set up properly there for that. And if we look a little bit further down, you'll see that it's saying it's an unknown host exception. In other words, it doesn't know how to get to smtp.gmail.com because it doesn't know what it is. Okay, that's one symptom that you could point toward DNS being the issue. Now, if we scroll up a little bit here and we get to our error message for the weather, go back up, you'll see that it's saying it can't get the forecast feed, failed to get the forecast. If we look down a little bit further in the error, which I think people typically just look at the top, if you look down a little bit further, there tends to be a little bit more detail. And in this case, it really tells us what the issue is, which is a temporary failure in name resolution. In other words, I can't look up my host name. I don't have a way to do it. And in this case, that is because if I go over to my TCP/IP configuration underneath my platform and I open up my interfaces, you'll see that my DNS servers are blank. Pretty easy to do this because there aren't fields by default to punch in your DNS servers. In order to punch in the DNS server, you have to hit the plus sign, and then you'll get that field for your first DNS server. Typically, DNS servers are put in pairs so that you have a fallback in case the first one has an issue. We're going to just use Google's public DNS servers here for this, which are 8.8.8.8. And then the backup for that, or the alternate, which is 8.8.4.4. And then we're going to hit save. And we are going to reboot our JACE, and I'll be right back once the JACE is back up and running. All right, so the station isn't quite up and running yet, but the platform is, and I just wanted to point out one more thing to keep in mind when you're having issues like this, which is that, of course, you need the DNS servers. The meme in the IT system administration world is that it's always DNS. The problem is always DNS. So you want to make sure that those are there, but you also want to make sure that your default gateway is set and set correctly. This is the address that your computer or your JACE is going to go through in order to get to the wider internet. It's typically the IP address of the router that your JACE is behind. And in my case, I'm just at the default, 192.168.1 IP address ranges. So my gateway or my router address is 1.1. Typically, you'll see 1 as that last octet address on a gateway, but depending on where you're at and the IT department and the way they have things set up, it may not be one. So with all that said, we should be back up and running now. So if I just go back to my application director and I can see that we are, I will refresh the tab here with my weather service, log into the station, and you can see that the weather service now is up and running. It has the ability to get to that forecast.weather.gov because we have the DNS server, which allows the Jace to look up the actual IP address that's behind that domain name. And that's sort of the way all this IT stuff works, is it's built on other things. And in this case, in order to use domain names, we are building on, or we're making use of, a DNS server in order to make that happen. So we'll go over to our outgoing account now. The queue got cleared on the reset or the reboot of the Jace. So I'm just going to real quick create an additional email here. Say OK, and we'll see that that goes into the queue, and then we should see it jump over here to my number sent after it successfully sends out. And there it is, and we can see that we're now in status OK. Our poll success date and time changed, and I just received the email. So I think most people probably are already aware that you need a DNS server in order to make this stuff work. But when you're going to use an email account, an outgoing account, to send out emails for alarms and things like that, you might just overlook that as your issue, especially now that Gmail requires you to jump through different hoops in order to make use of that SMTP server that they have. So as always, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them down below. And you can check us out at brodyprecision.com or our web store at store.brodyprecision.com. And we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.